One of the things I love about sports, the pressure, the adult conversations. It's not too mean to talk about somebody's age. There's a lot of pressure, and you got to win now. I was thinking outside of Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Jim Harbaugh, and Matt LaFleur, 4 coaches in the entire sport. If any other coach had a bad season, they're in big trouble. Kyle Shanahan has a losing record without Christian McCaffrey. That roster goes 7-10. You don't think there's heat on Kyle Shanahan? What about John Harbaugh? They wanted to run him out of town 3 years ago. You think they finished 3rd or 4th in that division? There's not heat? Even the rookie coaches. You get off to a bad start by Thanksgiving. Uh-oh, we got the wrong guy. You can even make the criticism in sports personal. Pete Carroll, though he has the energy of a 17-year-old after a bag of Skittles. You know, he is in his 70s. That's an adult conversation. Not a lot of coaches got into their 70s and were at their best. Bill Belichick, 6 rings, even named a boat after it. He feels a bit like a dinosaur. You can have those conversations. Brian Daboll not only got Daniel Jones to the playoffs, he won a game with Daniel Jones. He won a game. He goes 6-11, he probably gets fired. And I think he's a great coach. That's what's great about sports. That's not the downside. 5 of the last 8 NBA coaches of the year got fired from the team they won the award. Expectations, adult conversations. Win now, you're paid a lot. Yet in the Democratic Party, it's considered ageist, harsh, mean to have discussions about Joe Biden's age.
Oh, God.
His mental acuity? I don't know. It feels like the president's a fairly important job. I read that people were caught off guard by his regression. You don't have iPhones? Grow up. Have a real conversation. People were having conversations and questioning it 4 years ago. But in politics, I'm uncomfortable. Not in sports. Not in sports. Dak Prescott. You make Patrick Mahomes money. Win more when it counts. I love Lamar Jackson. Another stinker in the playoffs. Time for real heat. Sean McDermott keeps winning his division. I'm sorry, Josh Allen's too good not to end up in Super Bowls. Those aren't the downsides to it. It's why I defended vigorously the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark discussions. The girls could handle it. The women were fine. It was all the fragile sports media asking weird, dorky questions and being uncomfortable with it. The women were great. Caitlin's going to be fine. Angel Reese is crushing it. And you should push back on fragile sports media if they're outraged by things that are happening to everybody. I enjoy politics every 4 years, but the reason I love sports is accountability and adult conversations and debate at home, on a show, in a bar, real people talking about real things. Pressurized situations. Don't let sports become politics. Again, 5 of the last 8 NBA head coaches. Gonzo. We want more. Dak Prescott. Yes, you win 12 games a year, just none when it matters. So that's my takeaway. 17 days off. Sports has some politics in it. Let's never let it become politics. I like what it is now. And sometimes it's harsh and tough and almost mean and a little rude, and we debate, sometimes over a beer, and it's what I love about sports and what drives me crazy about politics. I'm sorry. For the last 4 years, I don't watch a lot of TikTok, but I either have singing goats or Joe Biden gaffes. It's okay to talk about it, really. The democracy thing, it's kind of important.
Okay. I was originally going to talk about football. A part of me wants to do 2 different videos of this, where first I just talk about who's under pressure, and I actually might do this now that I'm thinking about it out loud. And then the other one, I'm going to post a video where I just talk about whatever the heck, Colin's rant was just there. And I want to address actually what he's saying, because this channel, especially with a lot of the Angel Reese stuff and some of these other videos that I've made, we've kind of blurred into this general conversation about everything as a whole, and talking about Bronny James and all the people that were like freaking out about the nepotism or not nepotism and this and that and race and all this type of stuff. And so I want to echo some of the things that Colin just said that I think are really spot on. And this whole idea of us becoming, more and more fragile, that we can't call out players, or that we can't call out coaches, organizations, whatever it may be. And it's so true. I'm not going to address the politics side of things. I have no desire to do that. But I do agree, though, with what he's saying in terms of like, everyone, both media, both sports media and just the general public, and of course political media, they're always trying to usher you into a conversation in a way that's under their parameters, right? It's like, let's talk about, I'm not going to say names, I'm going to make up names. Let's talk about John Washington, but only about how tall he is, how strong he is, and what he did in college, nothing else. But what about all the other stuff that he did? No, we're not talking about that. But what about, no, we can't talk about that, right? They always want to set up these false parameters, right? And that is frustrating, right? Because it's just like, that's not what we want. And we see this, why other platforms like YouTube or other voices like a Rogan or, anyone else these days, where they're smashing those parameters. It's one of those things where it's like, no, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about things that are uncomfortable. We're going to talk about things that are very common and popular, some things that are a little bit swept under the rug, and we're not going to be afraid of the outcomes. And I felt this way when I was talking about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, and I had a guy pretty much try to tell me, like, you should not talk about this. You're the wrong skin color, essentially. And I was like, I'm not going to be afraid to share my voice, like, with regards to this. Like, the fact that you're trying to dictate what I can and can't talk about is a fundamental issue. And it's more than just censorship. You're trying to reconstruct a society that exists in a way where people can't share their opinions, or that they feel pressured to that they're not worthy, or that they're literally fundamentally unable to share an opinion or view. And it's like, I fundamentally disagree with that. And we do see sports media trying to get there. There's certain conversations that you're not allowed to have. And it's not even when it blurs into politics, but even just when it comes into certain things, like Colin was saying, the age, the health, whatever it may be. People always want to kind of silence that. If you want to bring up, say, Tua's injury, or even Joe Burrow's injury history, people want to say, how dare you bring that up, right? They get mad that you even mention it, and they want to make it a non-conversational topic. And it's like, well, how can we not? Stop trying to censor and dictate what we are allowed or not allowed to talk about. And for the most part, sports still does have the root of it, where it's like, we are willing to say, nope, fire him, yep, cut him, whatever, right? Like, it is a lot of shoot from the hip takes, which I really, really appreciate. And it can be ruthless. It is a ruthless business. And coming from my perspective, like, I love that, because I look at these athletes as so privileged, making so much money, that, like, you're allowed to say whatever you want in that regard, as long as it's obviously respectful. But it's like, people defend someone like a Dak Prescott till they're blue in their face. Like, you would think Dak Prescott is just this super poor, rundown guy who's like curing kids with cancer and is just doing everything he can to make the world a better place. And that if you say something negative about him, it's like, I can't believe you said that. This guy has dedicated his entire life to curing kids with cancer. How dare you? And it's like, the dude is making hundreds of millions of dollars. He is an entertainment piece for us to be entertained by. That is what he does. And people want to say, well, he's more than that. He's a human. You're right. He is a human. So I treat him with respect, but I also understand the game that we're all playing here. He is an entertainment piece. He's essentially a video game character. What I say doesn't have any effect on his life. He gets paid all of this money in the world because of that, because of people like me and you and Colin and who else get to share our opinions, get to form our views. If there was no views, no opinions, no bad things, good things, whatever it may be, then the sports wouldn't exist. If it was just about the gameplay, none of this would exist. It would be too limited. There wouldn't be enough entertainment value to it. There wouldn't be enough money to be made. We spend way more time talking about sports than compared to watching sports. And it's night and day. These shows are on all day, every single day. First things first, The Herd. Then they have their own separate podcast where they still talk more about sports. Then you got First Take. I mean, it just goes on. Pat McAfee show. It goes on and on and on. 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. But yet there's only so many football games. We've been talking about football for months now, and there hasn't been an NFL game, right? And it's like, so that's the game that we all agree to be part of. And so it is a little frustrating when you do see them trying to kind of influence that conversation, I think. And that's what Colin's kind of speaking to, because he's had some time off. He then sees the political conversation, and it is, right? It's very censored. It's very limited and constructed. And if you say, well, hey, what about this? They're like, no, you can't say that. How dare you say that about him? You're not allowed to say that. And that's disrespectful and wrong. And it's like, what? Like, right? Again, it's gaslighting to the nth degree. It's one of those things where you're just like, I'm a normal, competent human being. I have eyes and ears. I know what I'm seeing and hearing. Do not tell me that we're not allowed to talk about this or that it's wrong to talk about this. It's a slippery slope when you start telling the masses what they're supposed to think or not think, what they're supposed to talk about or not talk about, what they think they hear versus what they actually hear. It is a dangerous game. It really is. And I don't even want to just say from a political viewpoint or talking about the country as a whole. It's just builds a bad society, right? A society that is not a free-thinking society that can form their own views and opinions. And it may seem silly because you're talking about something like sports, like why is it that big of a deal? And it just matters. It just matters from just a well-being and progression of our society as a whole. Again, it sounds funny to be like, well, how can sports play that role? It just does, right? It's just the zeitgeist, the human condition, the conversation that we're all having. Think about with sports, right? Outside of politics, sports is arguably probably even more popular these days, but it is the one thing that we all talk about together. None of us have met each other. Most of us have not met each other. We don't know each other. We don't even know what each other looks like, but we interact. We're all part of this global conversation about sports, and it truly is global, right? Whether you're talking about Messi, LeBron, Mahomes, whatever it may be, like it's this global conversation. We're talking about events that are happening across the literal globe and sharing our opinions with other people that are either in our own backyard or across the country, right? And how we have these conversations and how we are all connected to, it all matters. Because it's what then sets the stage and the future for the rest of how we are then interacting with these either big or small interactions, whether it be with our parents, our loved ones, our family, strangers, whatever it may be. And also, again, how we continue to now have political discourse, whatever it may be. So it's just such a fascinating thing. And that's why I also love this channel so much, because again, like I'm interacting with people like literally from all over the country. And if it wasn't for sports and these discussions that we're having, we would be way more disconnected. And considering that the world is becoming more and more connected, and the way we get to where we want to be in the happiest, most freest, most, least amount of suffering world that we want to live in, it is through how we have conversations and how those conversations progress and how they're constructed. And so that is the danger of not having that freedom to be able to share and have those conversations, and doing so in the most uninhibited way, and the way where there's no one actually in charge, right? That's why people are so obsessed with Bitcoin, because it's not centralized, it's decentralized. And sports conversation is decentralized, especially because of platforms like YouTube. I can come out here and share my opinion. We are not at the mercy as to whoever, some guy who writes newspaper articles is telling us how to think or feel about something, right? We are exposed to all of these different views, and it's just so important. So I'm actually really happy that Colin took it this side, because this is just a fascinating conversation, and I will definitely going to rewatch this clip. I'll probably cut it off a little bit shorter, and then I'll talk about who I think is actually under pressure and all of that. But this was just too juicy for me to not touch, because it's something that I know I'm experiencing firsthand, and it's something that, you know, when I was a little bit more political, you know, a few years ago, and I was definitely more passionate about having those conversations, the censorship and the sloppiness of those conversations I found incredibly frustrating and obnoxious. And there wasn't a lot of media or content to consume that wasn't just so biased, so limited, so constructed in a way that was specifically trying to, you know, sell you a point. And that's why sports to me is so great, because you get so much more diverse, free, and open speech. But the powers that be still want it to be political. They still want it to be limited. But that's where YouTube is just an absolute slam dunk, right? You have that freedom. You have that just completely open, decentralized landscape that allows all of us to share our opinions. And that's why I'm so passionate about saying, like, I read these comments, I want you to share your opinions, like, because it's just the diversity of the opinions and the views, although some of them may be extreme and crazy and wrong and maybe even just awful and mean, which they definitely can be. It's still just such a great full picture that you get to see of exactly what the full circle 360-degree conversation is actually having, rather than through this one note limited, this is what we're talking about, and this is what you're allowed to talk about, this is what you're going to think about, and this is what you're going to hear about. So fascinating discussion. Whew. Those are just my thoughts. Hopefully you followed all that. I would really, really love to hear your thoughts on this one, because like I said, this is such a fascinating conversation. So let me know what you guys all think. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.